Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. The best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John. As it is every day to have you, our international friends, gather around to talk about our favorite things in the world with us, movies, movie news, a little bit of good stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, I went into the refrigerator and there's no expiration date on one Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Rob, how you doing today, sir?
Wow, John, it's good to know. Maybe I'm immortal. Maybe there can be only one, and that one is me.
There can be only one, and the one is me. What sort of interesting things did you do?
I did a lot of YouTubing. I was actually on a really cool show about movie soundtracks where we reviewed every single song on the Singing in the Rain soundtrack album.
What? Seriously?
Yeah, and you know what? I was thinking about it. It's put on by one of Chris Clark from a big fan of the Schmodown. Dude, you were made for this show. What they do is they break down movie musicals, but they talk about the songs from the musicals as album cuts. So when you remove the songs from the movie and just put them on a record, are they still great songs? And we went through the 10 songs that are on the soundtrack album of Singing in the Rain, and each time they do a new film. Oh, and well, they're doing Phantom of the Paradise next week, or the next time they do a show. And I have to say, it was a pretty dope idea, you know, because I love Singing in the Rain. It really means a lot to me. I think that's why they asked me to do that. But I have to say, I was on with Kristen and Chris, and both of them were incredibly knowledgeable. And they're like you. I think their knowledge about music. I mean, you've played music. You've been in a band. You're part of a dance crew. You know, you guys know more about music than I do. So it was fascinating to be on the show. I actually felt I learned something, but I did think I could contribute. So that was cool.
You've been getting yourself involved in a lot of really cool stuff lately. Between that, you've been moderating some like virtual panels and things like that. So yeah, it's good to be.
Speaking of that, I was on a panel yesterday. Another panel. I was on 2 panels where we talked about what the end of what could have been a better ending for Game of Thrones, and 2 of the people on the panel were David Brin and Larry Niven, 2 of my favorite science fiction writers that I've been reading since I was a kid, and I literally have 2 autographed books by each one of them right behind me. So there I was talking with these 2 sci-fi legends, and I finally had to stop and say to them, I'm like, dudes, I have autographed work of yours in this frame that you can see me right now. Is crazy.
All right, well, listen, guys, we do have a bunch of things we need to talk about here today, including a lot of stuff that you've probably been discussing, but we're going to get things started here off the top with this. You know, it is May the 4th, which is Star Wars Day, and one of the things that I was really looking forward to ever since they announced it was the Mandalorian behind-the-scenes documentary, an 8-part behind-the-scenes documentary that has had, Rob, I know both you and I pretty excited. You and I were both kind of chatting about it and really excited to see what they were going to do with that, and I was very stoked for it. So anyway, late last night, part 1 of the Mandalorian documentary dropped, and it was all on the directors. So it sat down and looked at all the directors. And it was wonderful to watch. It was only like 32 minutes long, but it was really wonderful to watch. And everybody from Rick Famuyiwa to Howard to Chow, Filoni, Waititi, on and on. So they had all the directors there sitting down talking. And it was really neat hearing about, you know, the process and the vision of going behind and making The Mandalorian, because, of course, I love this show, and I think a lot of you guys loved it as well. But Rob, I wanted to talk about the 3 main things I took away from that documentary. Like watching that first part of that documentary, there are 3 main points that really stood out to me the most, that's just stood out. Now, a couple of smaller things I want to put out. It was so cool seeing Bryce Dallas Howard's enthusiasm. And, you know, Jon Favreau said, yeah, we decided to take the episode we thought would be the hardest to direct and throw it to the new kid because they wouldn't understand how hard it was we were trying to get them to do. And to seeing she was really the actor's director in that one. Seeing Rick Famuyiwa just talk about his dad taking him to see the original Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. That was great too. And Taika Waititi, like kind of being the man. Like Taika Waititi was the man on that crew. Like he's done everything from, hey, I've done a big blockbuster sci-fi film with Thor Ragnarok, and I just directed an Academy Award nominated film. Thank you very much. So he was kind of that man. And Taika Waititi's whole thing was, yeah, this was like working with a bunch of amateurs. Every day was a struggle. I mean, it was so funny. But I want to tell you my three main takeaways, okay? So here are my three main takeaways. My first takeaway from the Mandalorian documentary was this. Dave Filoni is going to be a not small g, capitalized G, great director. He's going to be a great director. Now, you know that I like Dave Filoni. I have met Dave Filoni. I've spoken with, he's great. I'm not a big fan of Clone Wars. Everybody knows that, but I like what he did with Rebels and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, full disclosure, I thought the 2 episodes of Mandalorian that he directed this season were probably my 2 least favorite. But I'll tell you something. Watching this thing last night with Dave Filoni, I have never been more impressed with him ever. And I will tell you why. One of the first things, like everybody knows about his geek cred, right? Dave Filoni's got a lot of geek cred, and that's great. That doesn't make you a good director, doesn't make you a good executive, but it's cool. But I'll tell you what impressed me so much about him on yesterday's show. While most directors will talk about the things they've done to get them to that point and all that kind of stuff, and to some degree, every director needs a bit of ego. Every director needs that. If you're going to survive it and do what you're able to do, every director needs a bit of ego, and all the directors will talk about their experiences that made them capable to do what they're doing today. Here's what Dave Filoni did, and hear me out, because at first it may not sound like a big deal, but I'll tell you why it's a big deal. One of the first things Dave Filoni did in the documentary last night, Rob, I don't know if you noticed this, he said, I have no idea how you direct a live action thing. And the other thing he said was, this is amazing. I get to sit here and be mentored by Jon Favreau. And then in other parts, you see him conversing with other directors. I will tell you why Dave Filoni is going to be a great director, because he has the attitude of, I need to learn. And a lot of directors, again, you need a certain level of ego and stuff like that, but a lot of directors figure, okay, that's it. I'm here. Now I'm a director. Dave Filoni could certainly have that attitude if he wanted, because, you know, hey, I've directed series. I've got series out there. It's animated, but I've directed series. I'm a director, and maybe I don't have anything left to learn. Now it's about me communicating my stories and communicating my vision. Dave Filoni last night struck me as a dude who's like, you know what? I know I still need to learn. And when you've got people like that, Rob, when you've got people who have that sort of attitude, they never stop learning their whole lives. And here's the thing about people who never stop learning. They never stop getting better. The ceiling for people like Dave Filoni who have that sort of an attitude is practically limitless. When you see a dude like that who could just be, yeah, I'm directing this episode. No, he's there on set and he's still going to Jon Favreau. Blah, blah, what do you think about this? He's still talking to other directors. He is soaking in everything he can. And when I see a guy like that, it doesn't matter what he's directed before, whatever. When I see a guy like that, to me, that tells me this dude has practically no limitation on what his potential is as a director, as a storyteller, as a filmmaker. When his attitude is not, I'm the guy, his attitude is, I need to be surrounded by people who are, and I need to keep learning this stuff. And I am telling you, that just makes me more excited about what this guy's going to do in the future. So my first takeaway is that Dave Filoni, who was, to me, the most impressive dude of the episode, but Dave Filoni is going to be not a good, he is going to be a great director. And it's all because of attitude. And I was just completely impressed by that. All right. Second main takeaway for me about this thing. That was this. Deborah Chow is the alpha boss. It was amazing to see in this little part 1 of this documentary. Like, it cuts to Jon Favreau. They had done their little bit on Dave Filoni. Now they want to start talking about Deborah Chow. And it goes to Jon Favreau, and Jon Favreau was just like, oh yeah, you walked on set and you just took over. And then to hear Deborah Chow talking about, like, she's not there to F around. Deborah Chow is not there to F around. And she actually directed my 2 favorite, or at least 2 of my top 3 favorite episodes of Mandalorian she directed. And she approached us like, there is no nonsense. If you're going to be on her set, You've got to have your I's dotted, your T's crossed. You got to be ready to go. She talked all about prep, and she steps onto set, and it's her set. And now we go. She is all business all the time. No F's given that. And I'll tell you what, for those of you who might forget, Deborah Chow is also going to be the person who's going to be directing the entire Obi-Wan series. And I'm watching this last night and watching her just own everything. And I'm like, Obi-Wan's in really good hands. Like, I thought that before because of her resume. But watching this, I'm like, oh yeah, Obi-Wan is in really good hands. Like, this girl just had everything down to the finest of minute details. And she just walks and she goes, I know what I'm here to accomplish. I know what I need to do. When I walk on set, I already know everything's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And Jon Favreau, you can just see the look on his face, right? When he's talking about Deborah Chow. I just thought that was awesome. So yeah, my number one takeaway, or not number one, but my first takeaway was that Favreau is going to be a great director. Number two, Deborah Chow is a legit boss. Here's my third takeaway, Rob, and it was a change of mind for me. It was a change of mind for me because my third takeaway was something I did not think before, but I do think now. My third takeaway from last night's thing is Jon Favreau should be the next head of Lucasfilm. And I'll tell you why. I've heard people say, oh, maybe Jon Favreau should. It's like, yeah, Jon Favreau's a director. You know, all this kind of stuff. He's done some producing, yes, but I don't know. Just because you like some things he directs doesn't necessarily mean he'll be a good studio head, right? But last night I'm watching this thing, and you hear Favreau speak through the whole thing. That was the voice of an executive. Like, as you listen to Jon Favreau sit there and talk about his philosophical approach to who he hires, how he evaluates people that he puts around him, the team building that he looks for in his vision, and how to then be a support system to those people he puts in place around him to help them carry out not only his vision, but carry out their own visions as well. We heard some of the directors talk about how he was constantly there for them, but at the same time gave each of them a good degree of creative freedom for their own individual pieces. Rob, when Jon Favreau was sitting down there last night talking, I didn't hear a director speaking. I mean, clearly he's a seasoned, successful, wonderful director, but I heard an executive speaking. I heard a guy who knows how to run an operation. I saw a guy who looks at the big picture of how an entire project comes together and how to put pieces in place to make it move forward. That's the kind of guy. Now, I'm not sitting here saying, boot Kathleen Kennedy right now, just get her out and get you. But I am saying, when Kathleen Kennedy does move on from this role, sooner or later, I have completely done a 180 on this Jon Favreau thing. Because there have been other people saying to me, Favreau should be the next thing. And I'm like, oh, come on. I've completely done a 180. I was wrong. They were right. Favreau should be the next guy. I was just completely impressed by him. Just the way he approached that gig. I was blown away by it. And anyway, Russ, you know me, it's those types of minutiae details that I look for when I'm watching these types of interviews. But anyway, yeah, there's a lot to take away from it, but those are my three things. Number one, Favreau is going to be a almost no limit to his potential great director. Deborah Chow is the boss, and Jon Favreau should be the next head of Lucasfilm. I mean, those are the takeaways I had from that. But Rob, I know you had a chance to watch this part one of the documentary as well. What were some of your thoughts, and what would you say were your main takeaways from that episode?
Well, as you know, John, I've been involved for a long time making DVD and Blu-ray special features and documentaries about the making of movies and television, working on Lord of the Rings and Star Trek.
You just finished a new project, as a matter of fact.
Yes, we just finished doing 6.5 hours of special features for an 81-minute movie for The Hills Run Red, which comes out in June. So when I tuned into this, I had a certain level of expectation. I thought what we got was fine. I liked it. I thought it was really interesting, but I found it to be incredibly disappointing.
Really?
I'm saying that I enjoyed what was there. But I thought if I had done a documentary like this, I think the first episode should have been the origins of how did this show happen? Where did it come from? And maybe we've got 7 more episodes, but I'm like, they acted when we saw the show. I'm like, okay, I get it. I didn't learn anything about this show that I didn't really already know. I mean, this show has groundbreaking technology. It has, like, what happened who called Taika Waititi up? Like, how did he get the job? Did Favreau call him? What about the meeting where Favreau went in and met with Kathleen Kennedy, and Kathleen Kennedy said, you need to meet Dave Filoni? There's a story about the origins and how this show happened that I think all Star Wars fans would be interested in hearing. As a matter of fact, how does something get made? Now, that's not saying that they're not going to go back and cover this. I have no idea. This was, I thought, a great way to get everybody in, and the roundtable discussion. I like that format. We relied on that a lot when we kind of pioneered that when we were doing the Star Trek documentaries. So I really liked that. But I felt what we were getting was very superficial. And I really wanted to know, like, this show is groundbreaking. It's the first live action Star Wars show that got made. I would have liked to have delved into the fact that this wasn't the first live action Star Wars show developed. There was that Star Wars Underworld show. They wrote like 50 scripts. Filoni was involved with that. How did this show occur? And I really wanted to know, because it had to have been a great idea. Like, did Favreau pitch it? How did he decide? We never had the question asked, well, John, you directed the Avengers. You're Iron Man. You started the MCU, pardon me. You produced the Avengers. And how did this show happen? How did you come to be involved? And were you hand picking all of these people? Like, how did you come to get the new girl? How did you get Bryce Dallas Howard? Whose idea was that? And the design work, and where did this all come from? And the idea of the child, and all of this stuff was just, that's what I thought we would get, an origin story. And maybe we'll get into that. But I thought that was a big part of the show. Like, when we started down, I'm like, okay, this is part of, I felt like I was dropped into, well, maybe I was getting episode 4, A New Hope. And that's what this was. And we're going to go back and get the prequels in episodes 2, 3, and 4. But I thought there was just a lot of stuff that they glazed over that I really was interested in hearing about.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you on that. I guess the reason why, to me, it wasn't an issue at all was this was literally part 1 of 8. I mean, there's a lot more to come. And so I thought, to me, the reason why I liked their choice of leading off with this, the reason I liked the choice to lead off with this was, okay, before we get into all the muck, before we get into all the deeper stuff, here are your main players. These were the people directing this, and introduce you to each one of those. And I feel like if this was a 4-hour documentary that we were just sitting down to watch in 8 parts, half hour each, 4-hour documentary, and we watched it as that, like in one sitting, a 4-hour documentary, I don't know that it would have. Well, I mean, this is me assuming they're going to get into a lot of that stuff you accurately pointed out. I'm just assuming, maybe they don't. I don't know. But let's say for a moment that they do get into all that stuff later on. Then the fact that the first half hour covered this and immediately flow in the rest, I don't think I would have an issue with that. But it does become an issue. But again, it was just part 1 of 8. So I thought it was a nice, easy introduction. It was just here are the players. I don't know, but I certainly think you're right. I mean, they absolutely do have to address a lot of those questions in parts 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Because I am like you. I will be disappointed if they don't. I mean, but they've got to, don't they? Like, don't you think they will at some point, or else what's the other 7 episodes?
Yeah, again, I don't know. I mean, I thought that even from a standpoint, I felt this was very EPK-like. And while I thought the most interesting stuff, I think the most interesting stuff about it was hearing Dave Filoni's story about meeting George Lucas for the first time. I mean, that stuff was gold. And his whole attitude about how he got involved and how he didn't think he would get the job, and how he thought when he first got the call to work on Clone Wars, because he was working on other animated shows, he was working on The Last Airbender. That was the stuff that I thought was gold, because I didn't know that stuff. And to hear about how fortune favors the bold and how people fall into these things. I mean, can you imagine? You get the phone call, yes, I'm so-and-so producing the Clone Wars, and like Filoni's like, what? come on, who put you up to this? And how he was ridiculed and made fun of at work by other people because he was such a nerd or whatever, and how he'd come from art school and his design background. You know, we got a lot of that, but we didn't get that with the other directors. Although I like when Taika Waititi was talking about like going down to Weta saying, hey, you know, can I borrow some vampire fangs? Or do you have any orc ears lying around we could take?
What are the rejects from Lord of the Rings that you didn't use? Can I just have it?
I mean, that to me is when I watch a documentary about filmmaking, one of the things that I'm interested in, what I've tried to do in my own work, is cover the journey of how did people get to this position, what informed their decisions, their creative decisions, why do they want to make this in the first place, how do they find themselves here, and what were the obstacles or the creative choices that they had to make to get the show off the ground. And I think how this show originated is fascinating. I'm just not convinced Disney would allow that story to be told. And I worked for Disney for quite some time making special features, and the Tron documentary I made for them is 88 minutes long. And it starts with that, the story of how the major players kind of got into place. And it's not because, I just find that interesting. I think people want to know that story. And that, again, maybe they'll cover that. So I just felt while what I was watching put a big smile on my face. And look, I love seeing behind the scenes footage. I can't wait till they delve into that stagecraft technology, because watching like Dave Filoni direct the scenes of flying, okay, go rock forward. It's intense, and make it look good. And watching that they can do that in real time. I mean, I was salivating. That behind the scenes footage, John, is gold. And seeing how they made this show, because they're making Hollywood history with the way this show is made. And I can't wait to see them delve more into that. And I am so happy that this show is documented the way it was, because we're just not getting these kinds of behind the scenes looks anymore. And it's one of the great sadnesses of my life, and that I spent 15 years doing it. Well, actually now 20. But seeing this and seeing that they spent so much time and they had cameras on set capturing these things, I can't wait to see the rest of this show.
By the way, one of my favorite little stories was Bryce Dallas Howard saying, I was like 6 and my dad didn't want to leave me at home, so he took me to Japan with him, and I'm at a dinner table with my dad, George Lucas, and Akira Kurosawa. And it's just like, everybody, can you imagine sitting at a table with George Lucas and Akira Kurosawa sitting right there? Like, I love that story. But hey, listen, I agree with you. I think they need to do a lot of stuff, but I was really quite happy with the stuff they did do in the first. Again, it was only 30 minutes. It was only 30 minutes. It was only 30 minutes. We've got 7 more parts to go. Question here is, guys, what did you think about it? What were your big takeaways from that episode of the behind the scenes of The Mandalorian? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down and out of the way, let's move on to our main topics today. And how do we select our main topics here? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with our main topics by going anytime 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you just might see your submission featured as a main topic here on The John Campea Show. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 1. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Geeky Gator, who writes, "Hey, John and gang, 8 years ago this past weekend, actually today, 8 years ago today, the Avengers released to a record $207 million domestic opening, being the first film to open above $200 million domestically. The film went on to make $1.5 billion worldwide, which was groundbreaking, as the previous highest-grossing MCU film made $600 million. This movie is really what began Marvel's success. Looking back on it now, how big do you think that was?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And May the 4th, Rob, May 4th was the day that they launched Marvel's Avengers. A massive gamble, as a part of, at the time, was the climax of a plan to launch several small stories and then climax them in a big team-up Avengers film. In the first scene that we see Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America meeting each other for the first time and having that three-way fight. And I still remember, Rob, being in that theater and the electricity in the theater, because you have to remember at this point, May the 4th, 2012, we had never seen anything like this on the big screen before. Not only do we have these iconic heroes who had already had their own individual films up to this point, meeting, but battling it out in the woods. It was a short fight, but I just remember the theater I was in, Rob, was buzzing and electric. It's something they had never seen before. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe before this movie became the first ever to hit 200 million on opening weekend, I believe the previous record was like all the way back at like 1.6 or something like that. And I think that was the previous opening weekend record. This one came out, took a big step forward, first film ever to open over $200 million. And it was crazy. And you're not wrong in understanding, looking at the picture and what that all brought in. It was a matter of, because I'll tell you what, Rob, I was one of those people who, when Avengers was coming out, I didn't think it would be that big. I really did.
Right.
I mean, I thought it'll be successful. It'll be big. Yay. Can't wait to watch it. But I didn't think it'd be that big. And here's why. I didn't think it'd be that big because, like they said, the Marvel movies hadn't made more than $600-700 million. And I thought, okay, well, like everybody who's going to go see Avengers went to see Iron Man. Everybody who's going to come see Avengers went to go see Thor. Everybody who's coming to Avengers went to go see this. So if those movies didn't do all that much, I believe this one will make more, but not much more. Boy, was I wrong. And this is one of those situations where the sum was much greater, or the actual thing was much greater than the sum of its parts. The whole was much greater than the sum of parts. They brought this thing together and it captured the imagination of not just the comic book movie fans, it captured the imagination of average film goers. Average film goers were coming out in droves. I remember the AMC Burbank 16, Rob, when the weekend that this thing opened, this is before they had pre-assigned seatings like the rest of the civilized world. And the entire courtyard, Burbank downtown, was all 16 lines for the 16 different theaters inside the theater, all lined up, thousands of people packed out there. And it was just incredible. And again, we talked about this a little bit earlier, Rob, about how the fact that too many people overlook today what Joss Whedon accomplished with that first Avengers movie. And I think, you know, putting into perspective that the MCU movies made X amount of dollars, and then came Avengers. And what he did with that movie, not just with the big opening, but the $1.5 billion box office and all that kind of stuff, and set the template for what the MCU would be moving forward. And yeah, we just celebrated the 1-year anniversary of Endgame and what that all represented. But it also goes back to 8 years ago, Rob, with that launch of Avengers. First film ever to open over 200 million, laying the groundwork and paving the way for all the rest of the MCU that would come after it. And I think, I don't agree with the letter writer saying that they thought this is really where the success of the MCU began. No, the success of the MCU began with Iron Man. Yeah. But this was the Avengers opening up 8 years ago today was the most important event that's ever happened in the MCU, because if this one fell in the ditch, they blew it on Avengers, then the MCU today would be a very, very different place. Yeah. And so I think it's amazing what it accomplished. And I think too many of us, including me, don't stop to appreciate really what it did, not just for, you know, the MCU, but what the Avengers did for the comic book genre. It's what made it the most dominant thing in the movies today. But anyway, Rob, you're looking back 8 years ago since these milestones were hit. What are the things that cross your mind? Okay, I have an answer for this, but can I just interject something? Absolutely. Some massive news just dropped. Massive, massive news. Let me read this news to you. It is from the Star Wars website. Academy Award winner Taika Waititi to direct and co-write new Star Wars feature film for theatrical release. Oscar nominee Krysty Wilson Cairns to co-write the screenplay with Waititi. She wrote 1917 and Last Night in Soho. The writer of 1917? Yep. Okay, so we're looking right now here with Taika Waititi. It's on the Star Wars website, the top of their news. Yeah, I'm looking at this. It's official. Oscar winner Taika Waititi from Jojo Rabbit will direct and co-write a new Star Wars feature film for theatrical release. Okay, you know what? Let's get back to this. I'm gonna keep this open. Let's go back to this. In just a moment.
Okay. Here's the thing. When I've often said to people have said to me, they're like, I've told people that the world that we live in now, if you had told me 20 years ago, Rob, you're going to get an Avengers movie, I would have said, come on. No one's going to make an Avengers movie. I would have said, you can't make an Avengers movie without first making a Captain America movie or an Iron Man movie or a Thor movie. There's no way it would not work. It would be goofy. How do you do that? Cut to, 2012, 8 years ago, I sat in the theater and I was sitting next to Nikki Griffin, my friend Nikki Griffin, and I was with Derek Hughes and a bunch of other people. We were at the ArcLight in Sherman Oaks. And about a half an hour into the movie, I was sitting there thinking to myself, I can't believe what I'm watching. And not only could I not believe what I'm watching, I'm like, I cannot believe how much I am enjoying. I think the origins of the word Ghibli occurred when all of us sat and watched Avengers, because the only word that I could possibly imagine describing what I felt while I was watching the Avengers, and I hadn't heard this word yet, but if I had heard it, I would have said, this is what it's like to feel Ghibli. Because a half an hour into the film, I was having so much fun that I'd watched the MCU develop, and I thought, I didn't know how they were going to make Thor work after Iron Man came. I'm like, and Iron Man 2, how can they make Thor and the Rainbow Bridge and Asgard, how can they make it work in this same universe? And then how are we going to go back in time and get a 40-set Captain America movie after we've seen Iron Man and Thor? And then once I'd seen all those movies, then I'm thinking, how are all these characters going to work together in one movie? And a half an hour in, I'm like, this is, as an adult man who's probably too old to be loving this as much as he is, I couldn't believe the magical spell that was cast. And the first 20 minutes, I thought of Avengers was a little slow going, with the Tesseract and Loki, and they're in that base. But man, dude, once that movie got going, I was like, I felt such joy as I hadn't felt in a movie. I can't remember when I felt that. Maybe when I saw Star Wars or Empire the first time. But seeing Avengers in a theater, dude. But it was like you'd said. It was the culmination. It proved to me. It was like they slowly, methodically built up to Avengers. Kevin Feige knew what he had. He had to carefully curate it. And there were missteps along the way. Iron Man 2. I get it, but even Iron Man 2 is a lot more enjoyable than people give it credit for. And by the time you got to Avengers, dude, I'm just thinking back going, I couldn't wait. I wanted to go right back into the theater and see it again.
Yeah, and a lot of people apparently did, because it made over $200 million on its opening weekend.
We watched something being built. The whole MCU, moviegoers around the world watched them build this house. I remember I used to like watching houses get built in my old neighborhood when I was a kid. You'd sneak in and play in the unbuilt houses and climb up the chimneys before they were bricked and all that. I love that. We got to watch the MCU built brick by brick, and the Avengers was when the house was done. Then we got to watch people live in the house. But when the house was built, it was like, this house rules. Look at these lighting fixtures. And oh my God, there's so much natural light in here. This is an awesome house.
And is the house that Kevin Feige and Joss Whedon built. The question is, guys, as you look back at, 8 years ago, Avengers came out, completely changed the landscape and maybe the movie world forever with how we saw the comic book properties and all that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts of it as you look back on it now? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to main topic, Addendum A, which is, of course, this. Rob, it was back in January, maybe February, that some news reports came out that Taika Waititi was in discussions to help develop a new Star Wars film. And I believe you and I both said, oh, he's going to direct. Oh, he's going to direct. He needs to direct. Well, apparently, as Rob, you just broke a few moments ago, Taika Waititi this is now also on Variety. Taika Waititi is on to direct a new Star Wars film. Now, let's just read the way they've written it here in Variety. Taika Waititi will direct a new Star Wars movie for theatrical release, which he will co-write. That's key. He will co-write with 1917 scribe Kristen Wilson Cairns. You've got those two writing this movie together, which I think is even more exciting to me than just Taika directing it. Yeah. That's crazy. The news confirms reports that first broke in January that Waititi was developing a new Star Wars movie. The filmmaker was coy about those reports when Variety asked him about them back in February after he won the Best Adapted Screenplay. So he's an Oscar-winning writer, by the way, for Jojo Rabbit. There are discussions about a Star Wars film? Like, yeah, I discussed that with my friends in 1996, how cool Star Wars was. Anyway, it's official. He's directing a new Star Wars film. Of course, I believe he did the finale. He directed the finale of Mandalorian. Which was great. He did he of course did the Academy Award winning Jojo Rabbit, which was like one of the best films of the year. To me, probably my number one best film of the year. That film is ridiculously good. So he has done little low budget comedy with What We Do in the Shadows. He's directed big blockbuster spectacle with Thor Ragnarok, which the vast majority, not everybody, because not all movies are for everybody, but the vast majority of the audience ate up and loved. He's done Academy Award level stuff. He's played around in the Star Wars universe with this. Rob, in every level, Academy Award winner, small budget, big budget, blockbusters, Academy Award winner, blah, blah. On every level, this just seems, and you don't want to overuse the term at all, but this seems perfect. This seems absolutely perfect because he also showed, one of the things that stood out to me, and they highlighted a bit in that documentary yesterday, was Taika Waititi knows, because this would have been a question mark for me if I had not seen Mandalorian. But having seen his episode of The Mandalorian, Taika Waititi does know how to take his particular brand of humor and bring it in and mix it in seamlessly in a Star Wars environment while maintaining high action and high stakes. He knows how to do that. He's proofed it out in Mandalorian already. Rob, this is a hell of a thing. This is like a great gift on May the 4th. This is a fabulous gift on May the 4th. Anyway, Rob, you're the one who just broke this. Time for you to give me your thoughts. What do you think about Taika Waititi and the writer of 1917 writing and Waititi directing a new Star Wars film? What are your thoughts here?
Well, this to me is exactly the direction they should have been going in from the beginning. They needed to find the thing that Taika Waititi has brought to his work is an originality and an authorship. You know me, I'm always talking about authorship, and what I want is a vision. I want somebody who's not emulated things that have come before, who doesn't come into franchises and sort of put sort of a pedestrian spin on them. I want a visionary. I want somebody that's going to bring something new and unique. I have loved Taika Waititi since What We Do in the Shadows. That was really the first time I encountered him. The film I thought was a brilliant piece of work. He stars in it. He directed it. He co-wrote it. I think he co-directed it. But it's an amazing work. And then watching him develop as a filmmaker, every one of his movies has been different. I mean, I think Jojo Rabbit is just about as different from Thor Ragnarok as you could possibly imagine, yet it's still the same sensibility that's recognizable. And the fact that he's teaming up with a writer who works on something that's diametrically opposed to what he's done proves that he has the understanding and the creative security in his own work that he can work with somebody else, that he thinks that I'm an Academy Award winning writer. I'm going to work with an Academy Award nominated writer who probably has a different sensibility, but clearly he knows that they can gel together. I think this is the most exciting Star Wars news in terms of movies that we have received, certainly in the Disney era. This is the most exciting news for me, and I think the kind of movie that we're going to get is exactly what Star Wars has been begging for since Disney took over.
Now, of course, I'm looking at my calendar right here. In 3 weeks, we will get the announcement that Kathleen Kennedy has fired Taika Waititi over creative differences. It's about 2 weeks, yes? Yes, that's the general timeline of how long it takes Kathleen Kennedy to run out storytellers. Anyway, but if this follows through, this should be one of the best pieces of news we've gotten about Star Wars in a long, long time. And I think it just all goes back to the fact that with his sense of action, blockbuster, Academy level pedigree, and his ability to seamlessly bring in his humor into that environment, I think this makes it probably the best news we could have gotten on May the 4th. Question here is, guys, what do you think about the announcement of Taika Waititi, Academy Award winner, coming in to direct? It's now official. Not just him directing a new Star Wars film, but doing it with another Academy Award nominated writer from 1917. To me, this sounds insane. Maybe you've got some apprehension about it. Let me know what you guys think. Jump down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. And I'm sure we'll talk about that more in the live questions. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets sent in to us by Hensthroth, who writes, hey, John, did you see that Paramount has announced a new live action Transformers movie dates for June 24th, 2022? What do you think about this news? And does this show that they have a new vision for the Transformers universe? Thanks and stay safe. All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yes, the Transformers are still alive. Now, we've known for some time that Paramount was putting together writers' rooms and all this kind of stuff, trying to map out a future for Transformers. They got off to a great start doing what I thought maybe couldn't be done now. Resuscitate a dead Transformers franchise. They put out Bumblebee, and it was everything they could have done right, they did right with Bumblebee. And it finally breathed new life into Transformers and gave them a little bit of momentum. It has been befuddling to me, Rob, why we have waited so long off of the critical success of Bumblebee that we haven't heard any more, but apparently now they are moving. They got a new 22 release date, and this comes to us from Deadline. Paramount has given a date for a new live-action Transformers movie of June 24th, 2022. The studio's in development on 2 different projects. One by murder mystery scribe James Vanderbilt, and the other by John Wick Chapter 3 executive producer and Army of the Dead scribe Joby Harold. The Vanderbilt project, from what we've heard, is based on Transformers spin-off Beast Wars. The other is reportedly in the Bumblebee universe. It is not definite yet which one will make it to production. So we've heard rumors for a little bit that Transformers may be looking at 2 different projects, and they're trying to figure out which one it's going to be. Now, according to this report in Deadline, they've just set a release date, but they haven't figured out which movie that release date is for? Okay, I'm not going to lie to you. That's a little concerning to me. I mean, it's one thing to set a release date when maybe we don't have our director yet. Okay, fine. But you can get pre-production rolling and then bring in your Helmer and blah, blah, blah. But according to these reports, they've got their release date, but they don't know what movie it's going to be for yet. Okay, so let's put that aside for a second. The 2 options that they're saying that are on the table are, 1, a Bumblebee sequel. To me, this makes the absolute most sense. Bumblebee is the way they should probably be going on this. Because again, Bumblebee is the thing that gave them their momentum back. It's what worked. And I think you need to follow up on that momentum. They've already waited a little bit too long, in my opinion, so I think they should get rolling on that. However, the other option they talk about is intriguing. Now, most people don't know what Beast Wars is. Only the hardcore Transformers fans know what that is. It's basically kind of a prehistoric look, and I'm going to the basic thing. Where basically, instead of transforming into vehicles, they transform into different creatures. Like Optimus Prime would transform into a big gorilla. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Megatron turned into like a T-Rex or something like that. So they turn into those sorts of things. It's intriguing. The idea of it, it's very different. It's intriguing about what they could do with that. But to me, it seems like a no-brainer. Like for the average movie-going audience, fans just went out to watch Bumblebee. They really enjoyed it, had a lot of heart. Get Travis Knight back in there to direct again, and you move forward with that one. But again, I'm not saying that it would be a stupid decision to do Beast Wars. I think it's a little bit of an uphill climb, but that could be there too. Rob, what do you think about them moving forward on a new project? And as you look at these 2, which one do you think makes more sense to move forward with?
Well, look, I liked Bumblebee, and I thought Bumblebee was a great new direction to take the franchise in. And I just can't see a Beast Wars Transformers, dude. I mean, as much as look, you know what the problem is? Because here's the thing. This is going to seem a little weird to maybe a little weird, but Transformers are mechs, you know, and I understand, like, I don't know if you ever collected Zoids, but Zoids were like these giant plastic mechanical scorpion. And I love the idea of these things. I love the idea. I was even developing an animated show that had mechanical machine creatures. But the Transformers, to me, I just love mechs, and I love cars and planes and, you know, maybe not a boombox, but I like when the Transformers are transforming.
Hey, don't you be dissing on Blaster, man. Don't you be dissing on Blaster.
I really liked like the portrayal of Cybertron at the beginning of Bumblebee.
Yeah.
And I love that. And while it just seems Beast Wars is a little too incongruous to me. I mean, to me, the main Transformers should be, and maybe call me a purist, I don't know. I like the idea that the Beast machines are a different kind, like they're a different group. You know, I don't want to see Optimus Prime turn into anything other than BJ and the Bears 18-wheeler. I mean, that's what I want. And I as long as they have great character development that like they did in Bumblebee, I am happy with whatever they do. I thought they leaned, you know, the first Transformers with Shia LaBeouf was the story of a boy in his car. You know, it was E.T. It was really good. And other than the end, which gets a little incoherent. And the same was true of Bumblebee. You know, it was a human story, and it was about the relationship between girl and machine, and what did that mean, and people from two worlds coming together and learning how to coexist and helping one another out. That's the core, I think, of what the Transformers need to be. So whether it's Beast Wars, if they go that direction, or whether it's more traditional, I think what really matters is the movie has got to have heart, because clanging battles and history and all that, that's fine. But at the end of the day, the Transformers movies work best. It's the Iron Giant mode of storytelling. All Transformers movies, it's the Iron Giant. The Iron Giant did it best. You know, it's humanity, human beings finding out these machines have the same souls that humans do, and they bond on that tip. And that's what I want from the new Transformers movie. Bumblebee is a great roadmap, so to speak.
And listen, I'm not downplaying that Beast Wars couldn't be good. Right. I just think the big problem they're going to face is it is not going to, I don't think it's going to interest a lot of average filmgoers. I think a lot of hardcore Transformers fans would be very excited, but I think you're going to have a hard time getting, you know, most of the general public are familiar with the Transformers. They're not familiar with Beast Wars. And I don't think if they see, you know, an Optimus Prime transforming into a gorilla or whatever, I just don't think it's going to interest them as much, even though it might be very good. But anyway, Paramount is clearly
say that. Turn into a gorilla.
But I mean, Paramount is clearly looking at this and thinking there could be some potential here, and it'll be interesting to see where they go. Question here is, guys, what do you think about this? A new Transformers movie on the way. Is it going to be Beast Wars? Is it going to be a follow-up to Bumblebee? What would you guys do, and what do you think they will do? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 3. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by, I always mispronounce, Gourmet. I always mispronounce. Labelle writes, hey, John and Rob, some new official photos just dropped for the long-awaited New Mutants. We get a way better look and clean look at the Demon Bear and other villains that look pretty effing scary. Personally, I'm getting more hype for this movie every day that goes by. Your thoughts. All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yes, in the midst of the 32 delays and as the cast of New Mutants get ready to celebrate their 45th birthdays and all that kind of stuff, New Mutants still has life. And the venerable visual effects magazine, Cinefex, has just put out a look, a brand new look at some of the creature effects that I am telling you are straight out of nightmares. This Smiley Man one, I just completely dig. But we go down and take a look at some of these images that came from there. Of course, we get to see some nice conceptual art. The demon bear looks amazing to me. I just think that kind of mixture of physicality with ethereal kind of a design mixed in, I think looks great. I think it looks wonderful. Some really good shots of Demon Bear. And of course, we get to look at Smiley Man. Rob, here's the thing that excites me about these pictures. The pictures are very good, right? At the end of the day, they're just still images, right? Still images do not tell us if a movie is going to be good or not. But they can be positive or they can be negative. They look good. But here's the part that excites me about these pictures. The fact that Disney is releasing these pictures to a publication like Cinefex to run and highlight, to me, that tells me their plan is still moving forward. That tells me, oh yeah, they haven't forgotten about this movie. Because sometimes, Rob, it really does feel like New Mutants is just getting lost in the mix. It really does. Yeah. It feels like it's just going to be the forgotten film that they just forget about. And the thing that excites me about this is like, oh no, they still have an eye at promoting this and letting people get some looks at it. To me, this tells me the plan is still moving forward. They do have a plan for this movie. They want to release this movie. And I think that's a great thing. So Rob, let me ask you a couple things here. Number one, what does them releasing these images say to you? But secondly, what do you think about the images themselves?
Well, obviously Cinefex, they have a long lead time. So everyone thought that New Mutants would have already been in theaters. They didn't think it was going to get delayed again. And as you know, I did my 400th episode of Robservations, and I interviewed a bunch of people for the show, and I interviewed Bill Sienkiewicz, who drew the original Demon Bear story arc that was appearing in New Mutants, and he was actually working on the film. He's been doing posters for the movie and all kinds of stuff, and he's seen the film. Now, look, whenever somebody that's not necessarily in Hollywood, I don't care who they are, as much as I love Bill Sienkiewicz, talk about movies and what they've seen, I always take it with a grain of salt. However, the way he spoke to me about what he saw with New Mutants, Josh Boone, the director, I have confidence in him. The fact that they even adapted this storyline in the first place, I thought was amazing. It shows that everybody involved knew what was up. And the fact that Sienkiewicz himself was really, really excited because it's literally his nightmarish imagery of the Demon Bear, which was something that was very controversial at the time, his artwork style being brought over to New Mutants. To me, I'm more excited than ever. And seeing these images, like you were pointing out, they have a really interesting, unique quality. And they kind of don't really look like anything we've seen before, certainly not in an X-Men movie. And I'm just really excited about this film, and I am hoping against hope that when we finally do get to see this movie, John, when it finally comes out, I want this movie to kick major ass. I want this movie to be so good, and I love this idea. I love the Demon Bear storyline. I love everything that I've been seeing from this movie. I love the cast. Seeing Ilyana Rasputin with her soul sword magic. Taylor, what's her name? Taylor Joy. The
Anna
actress.
Taylor-Joy.
Anna Taylor-Joy. I love her, and seeing her wielding that soul sword, I'm like, I can't wait for this movie, and these images look great. I'm very excited. It's even got kind of it's like a terror dog from Ghostbusters in a way, and I love it. I just think this is so dope. I cannot wait. You know what? I can hear in my mind the growl, the low bass growl. I bet this Demon Bear is sounding like in these pictures, and I can't wait. I can't wait.
I think it looks really good. Again, I'm excited that they keep talking about it. I'm excited about the images we're seeing. And hopefully soon, once they get a better picture about when the theaters are indeed going to open, because it looks like that's getting closer, we'll start hearing about when they've reset the release date for this. And fingers crossed, it'll be sooner rather than later. I don't want them to push this thing to 2021. I really don't. It's time. It's time. It's time to put this damn thing out. Anyway, guys, question is, what do you think about this? The fact that they even put these images out, but more so, what did you think about the images themselves? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys, with that down, let's move on to our fourth and final main topic today. And our fourth and final main topic today gets submitted to us by Sam Sprill, who writes, "Oh no, Always gotta love it when an email starts with, oh no. Looks like Paramount and Hasbro have a new G.I. Joe movie in the works, which seems to be a spin-off for Snake Eyes, which has not come out yet. Do you think that they are rushing into this as the last two movies didn't perform well financially? What are your thoughts? Thanks, and may the safety be with you. All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Sam. And yes, there is indeed a new live-action G.I. Joe coming. Now, it needs to be pointed out, even though it's obvious to some, this is a reboot. This is not going to be a continuation of the Channing Tatum or Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson incarnation of G.I. Joe that they did to mixed success, I suppose you could say. So that's not coming out. I also don't think it's fair to call this a spin-off of Snake Eyes, just like Avengers wasn't a spin-off of Captain America, the First Avenger. I think Snake Eyes is going to be kind of they're going to use the Snake Eyes movie, which they are finished shooting, by the way. They're going to use the Snake Eyes movie as the launching point that will then lead into G.I. Joe. At least that's what it sounds like. This is what comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter. Lorenzo de Bonaventura, who produced Snake Eyes and is also producing various projects based on Hasbro's Transformers brand, will produce with Hasbro's arm Allspark Pictures. While details of the take are being kept on Cobra Island, the idea for the project is to build on Snake Eyes, making it not quite a sequel, but rather an expansion to take filmgoers deeper into the world of G.I. Joe. So my guess here, and I don't know this for sure, I'm simply speculating here. My guess is that Snake Eyes probably ends with, some government guy coming up to him. I want to talk to you about G.I. Joe. Ba, ba, ba. And then, and says knowing is half the battle. And then off he goes, and then we'll get into that. So I'm thinking that's going to be this. Now, listen, I've already said before, I'm actually kind of excited about the Snake Eyes movie. I think they got a really good group of people together. I think they said they were focusing on the action of it. I like Henry Golding. I think he already is a big star, but I think his star is going to continue to rise. I think he's going to be great in the role. Obviously, you need to bring him into this new G.I. Joe movie as well. He needs to be Snake Eyes in that. So we'll see where all that comes together. But yeah, listen, I'll tell you what, it's time. They needed to reboot G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe is a beloved franchise. And obviously they got off to a rough start with the previous two movies that came out ages ago. And that's fine. It's time to try another one. Now, I don't know if they're going to be big and successful at this. I don't know. Maybe Snake Eyes will be terrible, and all of a sudden, what we think is a good idea with doing a G.I. Joe movie will suddenly look like a terrible idea in doing a G.I. Joe movie. But clearly, this tells me a couple of things. One, it tells me that Hasbro and Paramount are happy with the way Snake Eyes came together. Because obviously, if they weren't happy, and that doesn't mean we're going to like it, but if they weren't happy with the way Snake Eyes came together, they wouldn't be putting money into pre-production and making announcements about now making a G.I. Joe movie. I mean, that's just not what you do. You go back to the drawing board. So clearly this tells me that at least they're happy with what they're seeing out of the Snake Eyes movie. And that's a good thing. Doesn't mean you and I will like it, but it's at least a good thing that they seem to be happy with it. And again, as I said before, this is just a property that needs to be rebooted. There should be a G.I. Joe film series going on. It is just too beloved, especially in today's world. G.I. Joe is the type of property, Rob, that I think would transmute very well in today's context. I think we need a G.I. Joe. I really do. So even though a lot of people I think are going to roll their eyes at the sounds of this, and I understand why, to me, I think this makes sense and is probably a pretty good move. And now is probably the time. Anyway, Rob, you've seen this, you've heard the story, you've read the news. What do you make about this?
Well, I think it's all good. I think that I can't. What is a spinoff? Look, Hasbro obviously wants to. They want to continue on developing many of their properties. I mean, at one point they were talking about doing Mask movies about that toy line.
Mask.
I mean, like, come on, dude. Like, really? Okay, I get it. Fine. But the G.I. Joe, it's such a natural. And I grew up loving G.I. Joes. I had 12-inch G.I. Joes because I'm that old. And I think that the G.I. Joe franchise, of all the toy franchises, lends itself the best to making a kick-ass movie. I don't think any of them have actually worked the way they should have. They haven't grounded them enough. They're just too goofy. And I think maybe this Snake Eyes movie, they need to make something that's kick-ass. And I'm hoping this new Snake Eyes movie is just that. And I think that by announcing this particular film, Call it a spinoff, don't call it a spinoff. I think it shows confidence in what they've seen coming down the pike from the Snake Eyes film. I think they're like, you know what? This is what we've needed to do all along. We have to get these things. I mean, these franchises work best when they're coming out every year. You know, why wait 2 or 3 years between movies? If you've got something that works, Paramount needs this. They need something. They need a reliable franchise that they can bring out, and they know that every year they can hit big because they haven't, you know, Mission Impossible. What else do they have that's theirs? And the G.I. Joe franchise is there. They've got to dip into the Hasbro toy box, literally, and make it work for them. And I want to see Paramount succeed. I want them to have a hit from this series. I really, really do.
All right. The question here is, guys, what do you think about this whole G.I. Joe thing? Do you think this is a good move? Do you think, maybe I've got no interest in it? Do you think, like I do, that, hey, you know what? This one actually makes sense. There should be a G.I. Joe franchise out there. But how do you feel about it? Jump in the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. And that actually brings us to the topic of today's question of the day. And our question of the day that I put out to you guys, I just put it out on my Twitter, which you can just simply see at John Campea. And I asked you guys just before the show started today, I put out the following question. Paramount/Hasbro have announced new live action Transformers and G.I. Joe reboot movies. Which one are you more interested in? Like I said, I put this out just before the show started. Over 1,700 of you guys have voted. Right now, 57.2% of you are saying you're actually more interested in a Transformers new movie. 42.8%, this is pretty closer than I thought it would be. 42.8% of you are saying you are more excited about the idea of a G.I. Joe movie. I'm going to leave that up on my Twitter. You can go and cast your vote there. But in the meantime, guys, just jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With all the news down and out of the way, we're not going to move on to our live questions part of the show. But before we dive in and get there, Robert and I are going to take a quick couple of minute break, give us a chance to rest the vocal cords, stretch the legs, refill our drinks, give you a chance to refill your drinks, go use the bathroom, whatever. So hang tight, talk amongst yourselves, and Robert and I will be right back. Everybody, and we are back. Thank you for your patience and indulgence as we took a little bit of a break there. For now, let's dive in and start taking your live questions. We're going to start getting caught up. By the way, happens every once in a while. Last week, there was actually a couple of questions that I actually overlooked and missed, so we're going to start off with those ones right now. So Greg Scott Bailey wrote in, I keep occasionally seeing articles or just online speculation that Steven Spielberg actually directed Poltergeist in 1982 and not Tobe Hooper. Whether true or not, what would be a reason for someone to ghost direct a film in this manner? Rob, you and I have spoke in the past about this whole situation with Spielberg and Poltergeist. Can you give a little bit of background to what that whole thing is about for people who've never heard about that before?
Well, back in the summer of 1982, E.T. and Poltergeist came out within weeks of each other in June for the summer. Poltergeist opened on June 4th. E.T. opened the same day as Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, by the way. And E.T. opened a couple weeks later. But people have talked about how both Poltergeist and E.T. seem to take place in the same neighborhood. And Tobe Hooper was hired to direct Poltergeist. And Steven Spielberg was on set a lot of the time. He was the producer of that film. And people have talked a lot about how Spielberg was on set sort of, maybe overseeing Tobe Hooper too much and making it more his film than Tobe Hooper's. And look, as a producer, I think that there is a lot of Spielberg influence in Poltergeist, but I think there's also some Tobe Hooper in there as well. And it's been an ongoing debate for years and years. Did Spielberg really direct Poltergeist, or did Tobe Hooper direct Poltergeist? But people have said it's kind of gone either way. I would like to believe that Tobe Hooper directed Poltergeist. However, when you had Steven Spielberg on set, coming off the heels of Raiders and Close Encounters and Jaws, I think that Tobe Hooper was happy to collaborate with Spielberg as a strong producer on the project. And I think maybe it's the culmination of both of their work.
Right.
But I wasn't there.
All right, and to answer the one part of the question there, which was why would somebody ghost direct something like that? Well, like Rob was pointing out, Steven Spielberg was the producer. Maybe he didn't want any. I mean, if that was the case, maybe he didn't want any controversy, and he just wanted quietly for his movie to succeed. I mean, I don't know. I don't think maybe someday Steven Spielberg will write a tell-all book, and we'll find out the answer to that. All right, Murray Reich writes, on Friday's show, you mentioned 5 things theaters should do. I want to add a very important factor that is beneficial for all of us, and that is thanking theater cleaning staff, theater cleaning staff members for doing their job, especially after a movie is over. They'll appreciate it very much. I completely agree, Murray. Hey, listen, it's always good to be nice. And when you see theater cleaning staff going into movie theater, whenever it's time for us to get back into the theaters, give them a little thank you. I mean, it's just a nice little thing to do, and I think it'll help motivate them for them as well, make them feel appreciated. I think it's a good idea, Murray. Murray also writes, my only concern with theaters reopening again soon is concession stand lines. Are they going to implement 6 foot in between each customer? Because if you're not a big theater, or if you have long lines, it may be a big issue here unless they encourage people to pre-order online. And we talked about that the other day. I mentioned the fact that they might want to implement like an ordering system. Like I know at a lot of AMC theaters now, you can order your concessions on an app first. And then when you show up at the theater, it's sitting there waiting for you. You can just walk up, grab it and go. That maybe delivering theater food into the theater to people in their seats. They've done that at dine-in theaters and it works great. Or they're going to have to implement, like they do in a lot of grocery stores, tape little X's on the floor that are like 4 or 5 feet apart and saying, please don't be any closer than this, and keep people certain distance from each other. But you're right. The concession stand line could become a problematic point when it comes to social distancing, because those lines can get long and the theaters need people buying concessions or they're going to go out of business. So it's something they have to be talking about a lot. All right. Ben Rayner writes, hey, John, happy Saturday. Obviously sent this in on Saturday. Live in one, action in one, and never go to one. The world of Harry Potter, Middle Earth, or the Star Wars universe. That's easy. I like Harry Potter world. I do. I like the Harry Potter world, but it's live in Star Wars, have action in the Lord of the Rings, and never go to Harry Potter. I mean, I like Harry Potter. I would like to do that at some point. Don't get me wrong. But if those are my 3 options, that one's easy. All right, Avery Zavala writes, about how About how of an MCU script do you think is purely Feige's genius after everything is revised? If he is responsible for like 75% of a movie's final product, then we need to stop complaining so much about small plot holes. There's only so much for one man can do. No, it's not that Feige is responsible, Rob, like for 75% of a script. He doesn't write the scripts. What he does do, though, is he sits down with his screenwriters and says, like, okay, here's what needs to happen basically in this movie. And then this major thing needs to happen, this major thing needs to happen, this major thing needs to happen, and make sure this, and this don't happen. There's the roadmap. Now go. And then the screenwriters write it out and flesh it out. Rob, how do you see Kevin Feige being involved in that?
Well, I think it's probably what you just described is probably a good bet. Like they know the direction they want to go in, but they still have to make movies that have beginning, middles, and ends and work. So, what they're doing is what, in a way, I would equate what Kevin Feige is doing to what a great producer on a TV show does, in the sense that there's a showrunner for a TV show has an overarching vision. And the showrunner, and Kevin Feige is not a writer, he's not getting in there and writing these scripts, but he's hiring people that what he wants visionary filmmakers to bring their stamp and their thing with them when they make Marvel movies, but work underneath the umbrella of the creative needs of Marvel. And I think that's a pretty interesting way to work. And if you're a filmmaker that understands this and knows this, I think it's a place you can thrive. And I think a perfect example of that is Guardians of the Galaxy. Like they might have known they wanted to do Guardians of the Galaxy, but they needed a James Gunn to come in and bring his sensibility to make those characters work. I mean, can you imagine in the hands of another director, would Rocket Raccoon have been able to interact with Groot? You really needed a filmmaker that understood not just how that dynamic could work on the page, but how to bring it off when you shoot it. And they needed a filmmaker like James Gunn to make Guardians work. Guardians wouldn't have worked, just not anybody. Kevin Feige couldn't have just pulled somebody off the street and said, you direct Guardians of the Galaxy. He needed that sensibility that James Gunn brought. He needed it. Just like Joss Whedon brought his own sensibility to the Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron. And I think if you have directors, obviously under Age of Ultron, Joss Whedon, I guess, had more of a problem and bumped with Kevin Feige. But Kevin Feige knows what he wants. He knows what Marvel wants. He knows what Disney expects of Marvel, and he knows what the Marvel Universe needs. And so he brings the tone, he brings the expectation, he brings the necessities. Like, here's the checklist of what we need. But if you can work under the confines of all of these things, then we want you to bring what you bring to the table. And then you get Guardians of the Galaxy. And I think that's what they need to focus on. And it's an interesting way for doing a franchise. I think all franchises need to work this way if they're going to work great. Franchises, we always see the law of diminishing returns, not the MCU. Sure, it's not been, every movie is not Winter Soldier or the first Avengers, but it's been pretty consistent. It's a nice wave. You go in, you go out, and they've 23 movies, John. Wow.
Yep, and no slowing down right now. All right, Dark Lord of Dank writes, I've recently started watching and loving Parks and Rec after years of watching The Office countless times. My favorite character so far is Rob Lowe's Chris Traeger. I know your favorite character is Ron Swanson, absolutely, but if you had to pick a second favorite, who would it be? My second favorite would probably be Andy, the Chris Pratt character. Other than that, but Chris Traeger is literally a fantastic character on that show. And he was one of the late arrivals. Rob Lowe's Chris Traeger character wasn't there in season 1. There was another character in season 1 of The Office that everybody forgets about. It was this guy character who was like friends with Leslie and was dating Ann Perkins and all that kind of stuff. And they just quietly brushed him off the show after season 1. And then they brought in Adam Scott and Rob Lowe. And the series just found a new life after that, and it was a really good move on their part. All right, Captain Clout writes, Force Awakens Rey knows her parents. She's just waiting for them to come back. The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker Rey somehow doesn't know them and relies on Kylo for answers. Sad. I don't think she knew who her parents were. She was just a young child. Like in The Force Awakens, she just remember, she just had the traumatic memory of being abandoned. I don't think it was ever inferred that she knew who her parents were at that point. I don't know, Rob, how did you say it? I never got that implication myself personally. What do you think about that?
Well, I didn't get it either. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I don't think you could. I don't get that implication, John. I don't.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could see why you'd look at it that way, but I just as somebody watching it, that's not how it struck me personally. But they did retcon a lot of stuff when they went into The Rise of Skywalker. All right, Nerd Errant writes.
Just a little.
Just a little. The Nerd Errant writes, if the last Starfighter has a fatal flaw is that Zur's name is spelt wrong. Now how are we supposed to say the Star League has trouble with the T and that rhymes with Z and stands for Zur? I'm not sure I'm following. The last Starfighter is
Zur and the Kodan Armada.
And the Kodan Armada. What do we do now? We die. It's supposed to say the Star League has trouble with a T. And that rhymes with Z, and that stands for Zur. Again, I'm not quite sure what Nerd Aaron is talking about. Ben, but I want to know the last Starfighter. Ben Rayner writes, hey, John, hope you had a good weekend. I did. Just read that this, just in the new face of cinematic universe of Marvel, new face of cinematic universe, Ron Jeremy. People aren't going to let the Ron Jeremy thing go. An anonymous viewer writes, my wife sat me down to watch Freddy Got Fingered. Oh, dude, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Freddy Got Fingered 30 minutes in, and I threatened to walk out of the door and never return if we don't switch it off. I know films are subjective, but have you had the same experience with movies where it just made you question your relationship? No, I have not. And you know what? I feel bad because, listen, Freddy Got Fingered is horrible. Horrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible movie. But I'll tell you what. I really like the guy who made it. I like Tom Green. I think he's funny. I think he had a great sense of humor. And here's the thing. Some of you may have known this, but when I moved AMC's studio out of the storage closet, we moved it into this studio space that I found right in downtown Burbank. And it had us, and across the hall, like we had a big studio space there, but right across the hall was another studio space occupied by Tom Green. And Tom Green was doing a YouTube show out of there. And it took like 8 months before he and I finally ran into each other. And Tom Green was like, hey, we should get together and chat sometime. I'm like, sure. So the next day he came over to the offices. I toured him around and we just chat. He couldn't have been a nicer dude. Good Canadian kid, by the way. Could not have been a nicer dude. Seriously, could not have been nicer. Just a really cool guy. And but unfortunately, yes, everybody's got a bad day at the office. And Freddy Got Fingered was his. And again, anonymous writer, I feel bad, but your marriage can survive this. Your marriage can survive this. All right, Willow writes, may the 4th be with you. What did you think of Grocery Store Wars? It's probably the first Star Wars parody that I've seen. I don't recall Grocery Store Wars. Like I remember Hardware Wars.
Yeah, I haven't seen Grocery. I don't know.
And then do you remember there was that one little parody? I don't know if you remember. This is pre-YouTube days. But there was a great spoof put online of, I think it was Garth Vader. He's supposed to be Darth Vader's brother, and he worked as a night manager in a grocery store.
Yeah, I love all that.
That was some funny stuff. So I don't know if they meant that by Grocery Store Wars, but I don't know, unless you're talking about Hardware Wars, Willow. Otherwise, Willow, do me a favor. Email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com, and please send me a link to whatever, because if it's not what I'm thinking of, I would love to see what it is you're talking about.
You know, you just brought up, did you ever watch the Vader sessions? It was they took clips from Star Wars and put James Earl Jones's voice from other movies in Darth Vader's mouth.
No, I've seen lots of videos where they take Vader and they put in like Arnold Schwarzenegger lines or whatever, but I've not seen them do other James Earl Jones lines.
Sessions, I'm going to take you on a date. I'm going to take you out. It's so good. I think it's my favorite Star Wars parody of all time, the Vader sessions. It's so good.
I will have to look for that. All right. Next up, James Germain writes, hey, John, over or under 30 that Chris Pratt, not Chris Hemsworth, could be chosen as Disney's live-action Hercules, because when you really think about it, it isn't their version of Hercules, really Andy from Parks and Rec. P.S. Use your head, kid, as said from Phil. I don't know. I'm a huge Chris Pratt fan. I don't know that I see him as Hercules. though. I still really go with, I don't see it as Chris Evans. I don't see it as Pratt. I think if they do go with anybody from the MCU, I just think Hemsworth is the Chris that you go for there. But Rob, I don't know. What do you think about the chances maybe a Chris Pratt being that guy? Here's the one thing. Look, I know Chris Hemsworth is Australian, but I think if you do Hercules, you got to at least give him some kind of a British Aussie accent. I just don't know if Chris Pratt. I don't think Hercules. I can't speak like Chris Pratt. I mean, I guess I'm what would you call that? Not racist, but I'm voicist. I'm voicist against Americans playing mythological characters because American accents just never existed back in the day. And maybe he could play it with a British accent, but Hercules he must speak kind of in an, I don't know. Please continue. That was great.
I just don't know, man. Hercules has got to have some kind of a foreign lilt to his voice. And if he's speaking English, make him speak like Jean-Luc Picard. I don't know.
Make it so. I'm in. All right, let's keep going here. Nicholas Pereira writes, I'm a big fan of Superman, so sometimes I'm tired of the fact that he's still misunderstood by so many people. In people's minds, Supes is trapped between Donner's old movie and the disunifying take of Snyder. Like, it's one way or the other. Supes needs a modern take in which, beyond symbolism and action, he verbally defends serious ideals. His never-ending battle for what he thinks is good in his unfailing faith in humanity and his common life as Clark. We've believed that a man can fly. Now we need to know Clark. He's just an immigrant friend convinced that with those powers, we would do the same. Nowadays, is there a more inspiring, empowering, fantastical story than that? Or tell me if I'm crazy. No, I don't think you're crazy, man. I don't think you're crazy. But honestly, this is what I think. And Rob, this goes back, to Man of Steel, but
right.
One of the things that I thought was so brilliant about Man of Steel, and I think there's a lot that is brilliant about Man of Steel, but one of the things I think is brilliant about Man of Steel is, and one of the things that I liked what Snyder did, even in the subsequent films, we see a very logical and natural progression of a young guy struggling to find his place in the world, not knowing what he is, and even searching for his own identity, then being thrown into a battle to save the planet and all of humanity against a race of his kin that he never knew existed, now trying to kill him and destroy the world he lives on. And then continuing that struggle with, what is my role here? Now that I know who I am, what is my role here? What is my place in this world as the Superman? And then as we gradually then get into Justice League, we start to see the beginnings of a Clark Kent, of a Kal-El, who now is figured out who he is and what his place is and what he sees his role as the Superman is in this world. And having embraced that, we started to see in Justice League, with all of its faults, some joy coming into Superman, knowing who he is and what he's there to do, right? And we saw that progression. And one of the big shames to me about the fact that we're not getting a Man of Steel 2 is we now don't get to see the fulfillment of that journey. The fulfillment of that journey where we start to see Superman kind of in that more traditional ideal of what Superman is. To me, that's just one of the big, big shames of that. Anyway, Rob, you heard Nicholas's rundown there. What do you think of that?
Well, I like what you were saying. We all love the character of Superman. And what's interesting to me is that the character of Superman himself is a symbol in many, many different ways, whether it's the immigrant experience, whether it's what we all want to be, truth, justice, in the American way. The problem is, how do you turn that into a movie? Because you could do a Superman story where Superman has no villain, and you could follow, you could do a whole story about Superman where you just focus on the immigrant experience, and what he wants to do. But when you make a movie, you need an antagonist. That's what a Superman movie needs. And the real problem with portraying Superman on screen is who's your antagonist? Even Lex Luthor. Well, how do you make that interesting? You know, even Superman the movie, which I think is still the best portrayal of Superman on screen, is Lex he's a mad genius, but you kind of have to keep making excuses for him to have a beef with Superman. Like, he'll steal nuclear missiles and fire one in one direction and another in the other direction. You know, and yet on a day-to-day basis, whereas the Marvel superheroes, aside from Thanos, when you're dealing with corruption in government, like Hydra, that's something Captain America can go after. But Superman could pretty much take that out in seconds with his X-ray vision, and he'll just sweep through and find out, you know, he can see if people are lying. But, you know, I just think it's a hard nut to crack. It's a hard thing to do. Right.
Yeah.
And well.
And we've seen a lot of filmmakers take cracks at it, and there will be more in the future, and it'll be interesting to see where they go. All right.
I thought Man of Steel did a good job, as you did.
I agree. Really Tired writes, I saw that the SPUMC, the Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel's characters, acronym is already in use by the Methodist Church, the United Methodist. I wouldn't doubt that. Does that mean Sony can't use it? Hopefully. Dude, at some point, the United Methodist Church will take Sony to court and get them and force them to change their acronym. I really hope you're onto something there, Really Tired. I really do. All right, next up, Harrison Bell writes, have you ever seen The Impractical Jokers? Did you like it? Listen, I don't really watch Impractical Jokers, but my buddy Ryan, who, like, I feel like when I go over there to their place, that's always what's on. He's always got Impractical Jokers on. That's it. That's always what's on. And it's not something I would sit down and watch myself, but when it's on at my buddy's house, I get a kick out of it. I mean, it's kind of funny. I know they just did a movie version of it too, which I never did see. I thought that was a strange idea to try to do a movie version of something that you just do every week on TV for free anyway. But I get a kick out of it when I see it. I do. All right. Let's see. Our friend Kevin Rubio writes, John, your anger over the Clone Wars, my friend Kevin, who is a real life person I know in real life, is always giving me a hard time about this. Your anger over Clone Wars animated movie has clouded you to the point that you don't realize that it was George and not Dave who created Ahsoka. No, I know George came up with the concept of it, but Dave Filoni, if you read all the stuff, he's actually the one who fleshed out the character. It's as much as his creation as it was George Lucas's. Anyway, so for May the 4th, I want you to watch the last 4 episodes of Star Wars, The Clone Wars, and tell me what's great about her. No, that's not going to happen, Kevin. That's not going to happen. And the next time we go to lunch, you can, I will buy you a drink and make you feel better about it. But I got too many shows, dude, that I've got people lining up that I need to watch, and a bunch of them I want to watch. And I gave 6 years, I gave 6 seasons to the Clone Wars. I have no interest in watching it, but I appreciate it, Kevin, and I will see you soon. All right, Really Tired writes, the SPUMC acronym is already in use. I feel like we already covered that one. Really Tired was so adamant that I know it. He wrote it in twice. I appreciate it. Christian's Reviews writes, did you hear Asian giant hornets reach the U.S.? That shit is terrifying. Rob, did you hear about that?
Dude,
I saw that on the news yesterday.
They're huge.
They're like
horrible,
big,
and I mean they're like kaiju in insect form, man. They're like the Godzilla of wasps, and their stingers can penetrate beekeepers'
protective
suits.
gear.
Man, dude, I don't. When I was a little kid, I was terrified the Africanized honeybees were going to come get me. Well, now as an adult, I'm terrified of murder hornets.
And that's what they're called, the murder hornets. It is. All I can hope is, like, they're on the East Coast, so you guys can have them.
No, they're in Washington State, bruh. My state.
I thought it was. Oh, jeez. And I'm supposed to be moving up there in a few months. So hopefully, they said I was watching on CNN. They're already putting up a plan into place to try to hunt them down and eradicate them. So hopefully. Best of luck on that, guys. Maybe they'll get COVID. I don't know. Maybe the hornets will catch COVID and all die. It'll be like in that M. Night movie where the aliens get splashed on by water. Maybe the murder hornets can't take the pollution that's over here and they die out quick. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. All right. Yeah, but that is terrifying stuff, Christian. All right. Orange Hand writes, I noticed Rob has a book of The Prisoner. John's thoughts on the show. I don't mind allegory, but this feels way too heavy-handed with his message. I don't even know what The Prisoner show is, so I can't talk about that. Rob, what is it you have? You have a book of The Prisoner?
Well, it's right here. It's Thomas M. Dish. Look at that. It is The Prisoner is one of my favorite television shows of all time. It is a 17-episode late 60s series that was created by Patrick McGoohan, who played the King in Braveheart. He starred in Scanners, Cronenberg Scanners, a good Canadian movie. And it is one of the most influential TV shows. A lot of people have never heard of it. They don't know it because it is not known, but it is about a secret agent that resigns, and then he gets kidnapped and taken to an island. Where this island is, we don't know. Who kidnaps him, we don't know. And everybody is assigned a number, and they play psychological games with him in every episode and try and break his resolve to get him to admit what he knows and why did he resign. And it's all about identity and individualism and fighting for your right to be who you are. It's awesome. And I think it's on Amazon Prime now.
Okay, dude, you sold me. I'll add that to the growing list of the things I need to check out. All right, Orange Hand writes. Oh no, that was Orange Hand. Ryan Lohner writes, I adored the latest Harley Quinn mocking the absolute crap out of the worst kind of fanboys. The t-shirts alone are genius. Rob, did you see? I know, I don't think you've caught up all the way on Harley Quinn, or have you? Did you see the latest episode of Harley Quinn?
No, but is it the episode that has the release the Snyder Cut dudes?
Okay, dude. It was a cold open, right? And so you have these two dudes sitting in a basement with a bong in front of them. And one's wearing a Release the Snyder Cut shirt, and one's wearing a The Last Jedi is not canon shirt. And they're instantly it's a 1 minute, maybe 1.5 minute cold open where like dude. The one guy is, I'm not going to watch Harley Quinn with her Mary Sue powers. She took out the Joker in that. I'm sorry, but the Joker's not a cuck. Blah, blah. And he just goes on and on and on. And it is Warner Brothers just ruthlessly going after certain segments of fanboyism. It was really funny, but it was also funny because, while the topics were not topics that I cover, just the mannerisms felt uncomfortably familiar, like with some of the nerdy mannerisms. I'm watching this like, these aren't the specific things that I've said, but that's the way I've said it. And I just feel a little bit uncomfortable, but they brutally and ruthlessly, and like what you gotta find, there's DC streaming service put out the 45 seconds of it, but it's not the whole cold open. Like some of the best cold open is like outside of that 45 seconds. But dude, you've got to watch the latest episode if for no other reason than just the opening. It's freaking brilliant. Anyway, let's keep moving on here. The next Luke1234 writes, I adored the latest Harley Quinn. Oh, that was Ryan. Sorry. Luke1234. Do you or Rob own In Search of Darkness? It's a Kickstarter 4-hour documentary for the 80s horror. They are making another In Search of Tomorrow for 80s sci-fi. Rob, I did you not tell me about this? Or am I thinking something else? I might have,
but I don't own it. But I've seen the trailer for the science fiction Kickstarter they have up is great. It's so well done, and I have not seen the I didn't get the 80s documentary on the horror, but after looking at their trailer for the sci-fi documentary they're doing, I'm like, oh, they get it. So I desperately want to go back and get that horror documentary. I don't know where to see it. I don't know where to get it, but I want to watch it.
All right, next up here, Luke1234 also writes, over under 40%, we see the Necromonicon in Doctor Strange 2. Rob, for those of you who don't know the reference, of course, we got Sam Raimi. It looks like he's going to be directing Doctor Strange 2. He, of course, did Army of Darkness. Rob, over under 40% that we see as a part of it, because it would fit in sort of the Necromonicon. What do you think?
The Necronomicon, would it be in, maybe, I mean, look, he loves throwing in Bruce Campbell, and if we get to see, I think I could in the Sanctum Sanctorum, I think that we will see the Necronomicon. I absolutely think it'll make an appearance. I don't know if it'll be a part of the plot, but I bet we'll see it.
At the very minimum, it'll be in the background on like a table in there or something like that. Yeah,
or it'll be in the foreground in a glass case when someone walks by.
Yeah. I'll go over 40% on that. I think he's got it. I think it's a missed opportunity if they don't. But I agree with you. I don't think they'll make it like a main plot point or anything like that. All right, Luke1234 also writes, thoughts on Becky Lynch possibly joining the MCU. So here's the thing. For those of you who've not heard this, there's a report going around that Becky Lynch may be appearing in a Marvel film. It doesn't say MCU. It says a Marvel film, which could be MCU, could be something else. Now, here's where this comes from. It comes from a tweet about Becky Lynch doing something else from the guy who hosts the Netflix, an official podcast by Netflix. Now, the name of the guy is Chris Tapley. Chris Tapley is, I don't know if he still is, but he was for a long time one of the writers for Variety. And previous to that, he ran one of the best awards season coverage website. That was his kind of, he was like the main guy out there for writing awards coverage and stuff like that. Now he does the official podcast for Netflix. Now, the reason I know so much about this Chris Tapley guy is he used to be my roommate. He rented out my very first trip to Los Angeles. Chris Tapley rented his house out to me because he was on a long trip for a few months. And so he rented his house out to me. So I lived in his house, my first visit to LA. And then I actually went and roomed with him for a while. Here's the thing. If Chris Tapley says, now in this tweet, Chris Tapley said, by the way, she's also going to be appearing in a Marvel movie. That's all he said. He gave no more context. The one thing I can tell you is this. If Chris Tapley says something is a fact, you can take it to the bank that it is a fact. So if Chris Tapley is saying Becky Lynch, who is the WWE Women's Champion right now, I don't actually think she's a very good wrestler, but whatever. I think they've got a lot of talent in the women's division there. I don't think she's one of them, but whatever. If she says if he says she's going to be in a movie, she's going to be in a movie. But do notice that he doesn't say she's going to be featured in something. I mean, it very well could be just a quick little, that character that has one line and then leaves the scene. That was Becky Lynch, right? It doesn't mean she's going to be a main character. It doesn't mean she's going to have her own movie. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means she's going to pop up. And it could be bigger. It might be bigger. But just remember that. But I can tell you, if Chris Tapley says that that's something that's happening, 100% take it to the bank. It's a guaranteed lock. If he says it's happening, it's happening. He is more in the know in this business, honestly, than anybody else I know. And so, yeah, take that one to the bank, man. Take that one to the bank. All right, next up. Santez Henderson writes, what do you think worked for Miles Morales in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse that made him more respected than the comics? I ask because I don't see the difference, but others have. This is an interesting question. And Rob, I think it really comes down to this. Nobody reads the Miles Morales comic books. That's why they went out to check out a movie. I guarantee you 85% of the audience who went to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse had never heard of Miles Morales before. I guarantee it. And so I think one of the reasons why you get a lot more respect and love for the character on the big screen is because to a lot of people, that was their first exposure to Miles Morales. And I'll tell you what, you know me, Rob, I didn't think this movie was a good idea. I thought this movie was a bad idea. I didn't even like the first trailer. I did not even like the first trailer.
I remember.
And it ended up being my number 3 best movie of the year. I even put it above Infinity War. I said, this is the best comic book movie of the year. I thought Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was the best comic book movie of the year. And I didn't even think the movie was a damn good idea. But Rob, I think that's probably, if you were to be asked the question that Santez is asking, like, why doesn't he work for people in the comics as much as he does in the movie? I think it's just a lot more people saw him in the movie than read him in the comics. What do you think?
I think you're right. You know, look, the comic book audience, there used to be a time when comic books were selling 1 million copies a month, but that time is long ago. And when you think about it, even a big selling comic book now is 100,000 copies. And 100,000 people, when you think about just in America alone, the 350 million people that live in the U.S., 100,000 people is a very, very small percentage of the population. And heck, that's the percentage of the population of people that will die of COVID-19 by the end of May. So that's not very many people. And I think that, or it is if you're dead. But I think the character of Miles Morales was, like you said, not known. And people were discovering that character for the first time. And that movie is so delightful. It's just a delightful, the character, the relationship he has with his father, the relationship he has with the alternate universe Peter Parker. I mean, everything about that movie and about the character of Miles Morales is incredibly appealing. And it's one of those great, I think the reason that movie works as well as it does is because you immediately fall in love with the portrayal of Miles Morales in the film. You love that character.
Yeah.
And that's why the movie works so well.
I agree. Well said. All right. Jared McBride writes, John and Rob, you have not failed this city. Well, thank you. For those of you who say, what? That's an Arrow reference. Thank you, Jared. I appreciate that. It takes me back to the days when I used to love that show. So thank you for sharing that, man. Jake C. also writes, this is an interesting question. What was your last theater movie? Mine was Bloodshot, writes Jake C.
Ooh.
That's a good question. I could tell you the last 3 movies, Rob, that I watched in theaters. The last 3 movies I watched in theaters was The Hunt, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Onward. And I think Onward was the last regular movie-going thing I did. I went to go watch that with Ann, and we went to go watch Onward at the AMC Burbank 16. And then I think a few days after that, I went to watch an advanced screening of The Hunt for a press screening. And I was there with the delightful Gray Drake. I got to sit down there with Gray Drake and watch The Hunt. And that's all everybody was talking about. I remember at that thing, everybody's talking about, this pandemic breaking out, blah, blah, blah. And I believe that was the last. So those are the last 3 things I saw. And I think a press screening for The Hunt was the last thing I was at. Rob, what was your last movie going experience before everything got shut down?
In The Invisible Man. Oh, was the last movie I saw in the theater.
That was a great one, too. That was a great one. All right. Last one we'll ask you with Rob here because we're taking him overtime. Mike McHale writes, 1 of 2. Hey, John, have you heard the Midnight Gospel on Netflix? Heard of the Midnight Gospel on Netflix. It's a new adult animated series from Adventure Time creator Pendleton Ward. It's basically conversations about many aspects of life from comedian Duncan Trussell's Family Hour podcast, set to some of the most funniest and trippiest animation I've ever seen. It's one of the best things I've seen in years and can't stop talking about it. The last episode had me absolutely weeping and should win an Emmy. Check it out. I hope you like it. Again, no surprise. It's a Netflix thing. Never heard of it. Netflix, of course, does the worst job out of any of the channels of promoting their own material. This is something I've never heard of. Now, I'd have to ask Ray about it because I know Ray loved Adventure Time. I never watched Adventure Time, so I have no point of reference for that. But Rob, have you heard of the Midnight Gospel?
I haven't even heard of it. This is the first time I've heard of it, and that's crazy. But now it sounds like it's right up my alley, so I'll go watch that. Absolutely, I'll go watch that. 100%.
All right, well, hey, listen, Rob, we know you've got things you've got to do before you're back here on the show again tomorrow, so we're going to let you get out of here. But in the meantime, where can people follow you and your adventures online, sir?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, and my show, Robservations.
A show about something. All right, dude, thanks a lot for being here, man, and we will talk to you. Take care, dude. All right, guys. With that down, let's keep on moving and keep answering some more of your questions. And we're going to get things. We're going to keep things rolling here with Major Tom, who writes, "Hey, John, I know you're not big on Blu-rays and DVDs anymore, but I found out recently that Kino Lorber Studio Classics is going to be releasing Deep Star 6 on Blu-ray here in the United States in October. It's one of my favorite creature films of all time." You know, it's funny. We were talking, I think it was on a show either last week or like 2 weeks ago. We brought up like the undersea monster movie, where whether you're talking about Leviathan or whether you're talking about The Abyss, or I know it's sharks, but I still count Deep Blue Sea as one of those undersea monster movies a little bit. Deep Star 6 was one that I liked when I was younger. I kind of got a kick out of the one. I didn't realize it wasn't already out on home video, to be honest with you. So I think that's pretty interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Major Tom. I remember the poster is what really got me. I loved the poster for Deep Star 6. Like, I remember that one. All right. Tim Platt writes, 1 of 3. The best thing about being a Star Wars fan is there's always something to find enjoyment in. True. While I find the sequel trilogy awful overall, The Force Awakens is awesome, though. The latest season of Clone Wars has completely satisfied me, with the last 4 episodes being some of the most enthralling and emotional things Star Wars has ever done, in my opinion. Clone Wars was not your thing. There's always a good book or comic to read or shoot. Even the video games can be a massive amount of fun. I love Star Wars. I love being a Star Wars fan. Happy Star Wars Day to all, and may the Force be with you always. And I like your point in there, Timothy. There's always something fun, like even in like the prequel trilogy, right? I'm not a fan of the prequel trilogy, but there are elements in the prequel trilogy that I really love to this day. Obviously, there's the big Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul fight is great, but I adore, one of my favorite things in all of Star Wars is actually the pod race from The Phantom Menace. I mean, I don't like the movie, but that pod race is one of my overall, I'd say it's in my top 10 favorite things ever in a Star Wars movie, is that pod race. And I love that you point out that there are things to love and even the things that you didn't like overall. And, you know, I'm not a fan of Clone Wars, and it is what it is, but other people are. And it's really good because even my friends who like Clone Wars did not like this season of Clone Wars up until the last 3 or 4 episodes. But it's always great to hear that people are finding something to love in the stuff they're watching. And I think that's great. And I'm glad you shared your thoughts on that, Tim, especially today on Star Wars Day. All right. Nate Dogg 101591 writes, as soon as the theaters start opening up, I don't care what's playing, but my butt is going to be in that seat with my overpriced popcorn and nachos and enjoying every minute of it, no matter what the movies out are. Oh, I agree. I'm completely with you, Nate Dogg. I'm completely with you. Now, don't get me wrong. If they were to open the theaters today, would I be back in there today, or would I still be a little bit cautious? I would probably still be a little bit cautious. And you know me, I'm the biggest movie theater guy there is. I love going to the movie theater. But in a couple of weeks, if we see things plateau and a couple of weeks pass and then they open it back up, oh, I agree. It almost doesn't matter what movie they're showing. Like maybe not Catwoman. Maybe I won't go back to the theater to watch Catwoman. I'd probably be lying if I said I would. But just about anything else, I will be there to watch. Just to be back in a theater again with the big screen and the big sound, a few other audience members in there as well, enjoying the same thing, bag of popcorn in my hand. Yeah, dude, I'm ready, dude. I am so ready to go back to that. I so am. So you and me, Nate Dogg, will be in that theater. All right, Nate Dogg also writes, do you think that drive-ins will see more traffic when things first start opening back up? Because social distancing and all, and being safe in your car. Listen, I still don't understand. One of the last things to close down were drive-in theaters. And I still don't understand why drive-ins had to shut down. I still don't get it. Like, we're talking social distancing. You are in your car. You're in your car. I seriously do not understand why that was a business that had to be shut down. Now, I get it. They were practically shutting down all non-essential businesses. I understand that. But drive-in theaters? Like, you are way safer going to a drive-in theater than you are going to the grocery store. I mean, it's way safer going to a drive-in theater than the grocery store. So I never understood why those got shut down. And Ann and I were getting really excited about going to the drive-in a few weeks ago, and then the drive-in close to us shut down. So yeah, I do think that when everything starts to open back up, and drive-ins will be among them, I do think, Nate Dogg, that of the few remaining drive-ins left in America, because there's not a lot left, but of the few remaining drive-ins in America, I think you're going to see them get some business, because you were seeing them starting to get some business even before they got shut down. I guess I could take the headphones off now. Even before they got shut down. And so, yeah, I think once theaters open back up, I think they're going to go. I enjoy listen, I prefer a real movie theater experience, but I get a kick out of the drive-in experience. Something about being in your own vehicle, kick back. You got whatever food or drinks you want in there. It's just, there's something kind of nice and nostalgic about it. I'll take a real movie theater over that for sure. But right now, the drive-in theater seems like a no-brainer. So I hope so, Nate. I hope so. All right, next up, Brandon writes, hey, John, happy Star Wars Day. Thank you so much, Brandon. In Justice League, Diana heavily mourns Steve Trevor. However, in Wonder Woman 1984, which also takes place before Justice League, he is alive and well. Well, we don't know that for sure. So how will they address this discrepancy? Will Steve just die again? Or will something else happen? Look, a few things we need to keep in mind here. So a lot of people raised their eyebrows that Chris Pine was coming back for Wonder Woman 1984. However, a lot of people, including me, and I'm sure a lot of you, had said for a long time, look, you have to bring Chris Pine back. You have to bring him back. He was kind of the main... acting-wise, he was kind of the main center post holding everything up. And part of the thing that worked really well in that first Wonder Woman movie was his ability to create the chemistry and work off of Gal Gadot. I mean, that was just something that really... And if you take that away, I don't know how much the movie works. But Patty Jenkins did a masterful job directing that film, and we all kind of felt, if you do a second one, you kind of have to bring back Chris Pine. How you do it, we don't know, but one way or the other, you got to bring him back. And then sure enough, we saw the trailer come out and there's Steve Trevor. He's back. But what we don't know is, what is he? Is he a ghost? Maybe nobody else sees him. I mean, I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but I'm saying we don't know yet. Is he really Steve Trevor that's been brought back? We don't know yet. Or is it some kind of doppelganger? We don't know. If it is the real Steve Trevor brought back, how did he come back? Is it one of those supernatural things where he's back, but he only gets to be back for 24 hours, like in Supernatural or in, say, Onward? He only gets to be back for one day. If so, why? I mean, we don't know. There's just so many unanswered questions right now about Steve Trevor's presence in the movie that I am personally right now not going to worry about the discrepancies that his presence causes for what happens between the events of the original Wonder Woman movie and then Batman versus Superman. Because until we know the details, it's impossible to say what is and what is not a contradiction, right? Or how to, get those things to add up to each other, or if there even is a discrepancy, right? So I agree on the surface, Steve Trevor's there, but she said she lost him ages and ages and ages ago. That's a discrepancy. Oh yeah, on its surface, it does look like that. And maybe they'll just pull an X-Men and go continuity, schmontinuity. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe they just pull an X-Men and go continuity, schmontinuity. Or maybe within the movie itself, it kind of explains that. Maybe it's just a double. I mean, I don't know. There's just so much stuff we have to know first, Brandon. So I'm not going to worry about it too much quite yet. But I'm sure once we see Wonder Woman 84, then we'll have a lot to talk about when that comes up. All right, Daryl Hannah's ass writes, I am a beautiful piece of art and should be treated as such. That was, of course, something we said on the show the other week. Of course, it's like, hey, look, I totally get why Disney Plus had to CGI some extra long hair to hide her ass, but make no mistake, her ass is a work of art and should be treated as such. I completely agree. All right, next up, Sheridan writes, some of my favorite non-franchise films. Number 10, A Scanner Darkly. Nice. Number 9. By the way, I was trying to think of the title of A Scanner Darkly the other day. We were talking about Robert Downey Jr. and Keanu Reeves, and I forgot the name of the movie. That was the name of the movie. Thank you for that. All right, number 9, City of Lost Children. Number 8, A Silent Voice. Number 7, Juno. Number 6, Walk the Line. Number 5, Dance with the Wolves. Do you mean Dances with Wolves? Probably Dances with Wolves. Did win the Academy Award for Best Picture. All right. Number 4, Pan's Labyrinth. Number 3, Mulholland Drive. Number 2, Donnie Darko. And number 1, Big Fish. Really? Big Fish. I'm not a big Tim Burton fan. He's certainly done a couple of movies that I really appreciate. But overall, I don't consider myself like a big Tim Burton fan. Big Fish is probably one of my personal least favorite of his, even though Ewan McGregor is quite good in it, but that's one that never really worked for me so well. But I've got a buddy, the reason I find it interesting, I've got a buddy of mine from Saskatoon that loved Big Fish. Like, just thought it was really, like, kind of the way I feel about Man of Steel. He really thought Big Fish was like an underappreciated masterpiece. And so, again, it just speaks to the brilliance of the subjectivity of film, man. And I'm glad you appreciate it on that level, Sheridan. Thanks for sharing that. All right, 50 Shades of Geek writes, Happy May the 4th, John. Thank you so much, 50 Shades. In honor of this day, I have a Star Wars confession. As a child, I used to be afraid of Jar Jar Binks. Yes, you did not read that wrong. Today, though, Jar Jar is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. All film is subjective, right? Hey, listen, I may shake my head, but that's the brilliant thing about movies, is that there can be something, there can either be a movie or something about a movie that a lot of us really hate. But that movie or that element of that movie may strike somebody in a completely different way. That is the brilliant things about movies. Is that there is, no matter what it is you see in a movie, there's somebody out there that is going to, speak to, or that thing is going to appeal to on a certain level because of their background and their makeup and their DNA, right? And that's not a bad thing. That is a great thing about movies. Then no matter how much you and I dislike something, there's going to be somebody who gets some appreciation out of it. No matter how much everybody hates a certain movie, the reality is because film is subjective, you and I might watch it and find something that really does speak to us. And that's a great thing, even if it's Jar Jar Binks, 50 Shades, even if it's Jar Jar Binks. All right, Scott D writes, watch the final 4 episodes of the Clone Wars. Really amazing stuff and very well done. Fantastic storytelling. Glad to see it got the ending it deserved. I know you aren't a big fan of the series, but you really should watch the last 4 episodes. No interest in that, Scott, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. All right, next up, Undead Sick 83 writes, hey, John, have you seen the episode titles for season 2 of Mandalorian that were released? I have not heard about this. Number 1, The Search. Number 2, The Confrontation. Number 3, The Bounty. Number 4, The Republic. Number 5, The Loyalist. Number 6, The Sorcerer. Number 7, The Return. And number 8, The Empire. Thoughts? Okay. Right now, I don't know if that's true. I don't know where you got that from, Undead Sick. So let's, which this could all be BS that you might have read that on a site that I'm just making it up, but maybe it's true. Let's go with it's true for a second. Part of the reason I love the titles is because it doesn't actually give anything away. You remember like the soundtrack titles when The Force Awakens was coming out? Not The Force Awakens, The Phantom Menace. When The Phantom Menace was coming out, do you remember this? The soundtrack, the titles of the soundtrack got released before the movie came out. Some of you may not remember this or know about this, but this is absolutely true. So before the Phantom Menace came out, the soundtrack titles got leaked. Or that wasn't even leaked. I think they just put it out. I think they just put it out. But one of the tracks on the soundtrack for the upcoming movie, at the time upcoming movie, The Phantom Menace, was called Qui-Gon's Noble End. It's like, well, I guess we know what happens to this Qui-Gon character, right? It gave it away. So assuming that these titles are correct and they're legitimate, one of the great things about it is it doesn't actually give anything away. I mean, the Loyalist and the Empire, okay, something to do with the Empire, but we already know the Empire has something to do with the Mandalorian story, so no problem. The Sorcerer, okay, maybe some kind of Force user, okay, but we know that there's Force users in there because we've already got the child, right? We've already got Baby Yoda, so we know that as well. So I like the fact that if this is legit, it's actually not giving anything away, and I appreciate that very much. Other than that, I mean, it's neither good nor bad. It's just titles that has no meaning, really. So, but that's a good thing about it. That's a good thing about it. All right. Undead Sick also writes, hey, John, have you ever looked at a picture of Michael Biehn and a picture of Captain Rex? Any similarities there? Just saying. Biehn has a look. I've been talking a lot about Michael Biehn over the years. That this is a guy who should have been a major, like, I won't say Leo or Daniel Day-Lewis level A-list star, but should have been at some point like maybe a Brad Pitt level star. I'm not saying he's as good looking as Brad Pitt, but he is a guy who should have had that level of a career. I just always thought he was that good, and I'm not really sure why he didn't, but I love seeing him stuff. He's going to be, I believe they just said he's going to be in the next season of Mandalorian, which is great. And I don't know, maybe that's what they're going to do. Maybe they won't. All right, Chris Hunt writes, just wanted to clarify, at the end of Man of Steel, there's a flashback to young Clark standing like a superhero with a towel. Oh, okay, I see you're saying, yeah, so Chris Hunt wrote in the other day. I think it was Chris that wrote in the other day saying, hey, do you think they also CGI'd the towel? I'm like, what are we talking about? The towel? The towel being, because we talked about how in Man of Steel, the cape is CGI in most of the movie, which I thought was a questionable decision at first. And then after seeing how they did it in the movie, I thought it was a great decision. But I didn't know what you mean. The towel, like, did they cover Clark's face with a towel? What are you talking? Okay, the kid version of him with the towel as a cape. Now I say, thank you for clarifying. I probably should have picked up on that, but thank you for clarifying that for me, Chris. I appreciate that, dude. All right, D.A. Miller writes, Hey, John, may the 4th be with you and with you, D.A. Miller. When did you see the holiday TV show last? It's not canon, but it is that lost cousin that nobody talks about. So, of course, he's talking about the Star Wars Christmas special, the holiday special, that will forever live in infamy. You guys have all heard about the holiday special, and you've heard about how terrible it is. Most times, things are not as good or as terrible as their reputations precede them. In the case of the holiday special, yes, it is. It's really that terrible. It is one of the worst things you'll ever see in your life. It is that bad. I last watched it because I hadn't seen it in ages. And I last watched it, I'm going to say about a year and a half ago, I think. I think it was about a year and a half ago because somebody pointed me to it it was on YouTube of all places that somebody sent me a link, and I'm like, I couldn't help myself but click on it. And then once I started watching it, I'm just like, I couldn't stop. It was like watching a car accident. It is seriously one of the most horrible things you've ever seen. It was just that bad. All right, guys, we've only got like another minute or so left. So we'll get the Diamond Dog's puppy the question out of the way here, and then we'll have to wrap it up for today. Diamond Dog's puppy writes, hey, John, underrated movie pick for today. 2006, Running Scared. When people see it, they like/love it, yet so many have never even heard of it. Excellent gritty crime drama that was unpredictable with a surprising turn from the late Paul Walker. Thoughts? Running Scared wasn't bad. We actually talked about Running Scared shortly after Paul Walker had passed away. Honestly, I didn't think it was that good. Let me just bring it up here, though, for a second. Running Scared, to see what the the reviews of it were, because I don't remember it. You know what? It wasn't that bad. It also had like the iconic for Chaz Palminteri, who's like the gangster and everything. So I remember him being in that. Vera Farmiga was in it, and one of Paul Walker's final things that he ever did. Like as leading man source things outside of the Fast and Furious franchise back in 2006. Yeah, not bad. I'm not a big fan of it. Like, I didn't love it. And that's granted, it's been a while since I watched it. It had been a while since I had watched it after Paul Walker died. And it's been obviously even longer now. But I remember enjoying it, but I don't think I loved it. I don't know. I might have to go back and revisit that one, Diamond Dog. I might have to go back and revisit that one. Thanks for putting that one back on the radar. All right, guys, listen. That will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here and making this show a part of your day. It's always an honor that you guys would spend a bunch of your time with us here in the little fan community. And listen, guys, special thank you to all of you who sent in the questions. Number one, because you give us great fun things to talk about. But number two, by sending in those questions, you supported the channel while you did it. And all of us here, from myself, Robert, Aaron, Chris, fact checker Jonathan, Ray, all of us here on the channel, thank you guys very, very much for that. Now, there are still a bunch of questions yet to come. Do not worry. I'm going to put out a companion video a little bit later today. Make sure we get all caught up on those questions. If not a companion video later today, then we'll start off tomorrow's show by getting picked up on your leftover questions. So guys, that will do it for me for now. Thank you so much for being here. Guys, do the 4 big things, please. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and take care of the people around you. And we're all going to get through this stuff sooner rather than later. All right, guys, thanks a lot for being here. My name is John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.